No, that's just the wind coming in through the grates. Yeah, weird, right? I know. Yeah. All right. So hey, today, like I said, we're gonna keep it a little more chill. There's a smaller group today. A lot of the other guys came this morning, so they'll be catching up on video. But today we're going to talk about overpowering adversity and failure. All right. At the end of the day, especially in baseball, but in athletics as a whole, we have to remember that the obstacle is the way. The thing that is causing us to fail is the thing we have to get better at. Okay. So we can allow it to either defeat us or empower us, depending on our perspective. Okay. So today we'll go more in depth about that. The goal today, we need to remember that adversity is going to create strength. Okay? We have to learn how to reframe those failures as feedback. It's not the end all be all. It's actually you need to fail. Okay? Otherwise, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. Okay? Use that adversity to build resilience and confidence, and then understand the difference between struggling and quitting. Struggling is okay, it's expected. Quitting, not so much. Okay? So, to begin with, we'll start with a little story time. One of the things when it comes to failure, when it comes to sports performance as a whole, we need to remind ourselves of the fact that the fact that we can be so concerned about a sport is a luxury, right? That we can care so much about something that is fun to do is a gift. Okay? We have to remember that, especially when things get difficult. Okay? So you need to remind yourself, yes, this is hard. Yes, this is annoying. Yes, failure sucks, but compared to what? Okay, like zoom out a little bit. Think about big life issues. Zach Sorensen, I've talked about him before. He talks about how his mom battled with MS, multiple sclerosis, for 40 years. And one thing that he remembered before she passed is when he was struggling on the baseball field, it's nothing compared to the daily struggle that she goes through battling this disease just to be a normal person. All right? Think about people with cancer. Think about disease in the world as a whole. Think about how much bigger picture issues people are dealing with, and we have the luxury of worrying about the fact that we struck out a couple too many times, or we gave up a run, right? So if we can zoom out, it helps us reframe things, okay? So when things get really tough, when you're really struggling, and you're questioning baseball, questioning all these things, remind yourself, compared to what? This sucks compared to what? This workout is hard compared to what? Okay? It's not Navy SEAL training, okay? It's just I made you do 6 sets of sleds, right? It's not that bad. You know what I mean? So remind yourself, allow that to kind of push you when things get difficult, all right? Allow that to put things in perspective when you feel like quitting, okay? But also remember some of the stories that you've probably heard before when it comes to people failing, right? And becoming better because of it. Everyone knows the story of Michael Jordan, right? He got cut from his high school team. Everyone's heard that one, okay? Think about some others. Does anybody have any others that sports stories that you think about when it comes to failure or overcoming adversity or anything like that? All right. I think of Blake Trinan, how he couldn't even play college baseball, right? No one wanted him. He tried to play at Baker and it didn't work. Ended up finally being able to figure something out and was able to be extremely successful. But if he would have allowed the fact that the NAIA school didn't like him, he would have gave up and never became the major league relief pitcher that he is now. Okay. Think about Derek Jeter. He talks a lot in his story, right? His personal story of the fact that he was, undersized, not a power guy, defensive focused, that kind of he struggled a lot doing that. Okay, so being able to overpower all those struggles kind of turned him into the gritty ball player that he is today. Okay, or that we came to know him to be. Another good one is Eric Gagne. Do you guys know who that is? Yeah, Eric Gagne. One of the things is he started or came into the league as a starter, right? And he eventually transitioned into being a relief pitcher, right? And he kind of struggled as a starter, and he could have tied his identity to that and tied the fact that he was failing as a starter, tied that to his identity and continued to struggle. Or he could embrace the fact that, hey, I have a new opportunity, a new chance. Let me do the best I can at being a reliever. And then he became one of the greatest relievers of the modern era, okay? The other thing is that there's this story that I heard of about baseball cards. So there's a camp going on a bunch of baseball players. It was like a couple day camp, and they at the end of the camp they all got a pack of baseball cards on the very last day. And some of them opened them up immediately. Some of them held on to them. And at the end of the day, one of the coaches went up to him and asked him, "Hey, to those of you who didn't open the cards, why didn't you open the cards?" They're like, "Oh, well, we were afraid of maybe, the card getting destroyed, right? Maybe it's going to be safer if we keep it in the package, okay? We don't want the corners to get bent. We don't want to lose one. We don't want to do anything like that." But then, they turned to the people who opened their cards and they were like, "Why did you open your cards immediately?" And they immediately said, "Well, I wanted to see what I got, what I had in there," okay? And a lot of the time, as simple of an example as that can be, we got to kind of take that to our own perspective, our own lives, our own career. Are you going to play it safe? Or are you going to just, hey, as long as everything's okay, I'm just going to stick with this? Or are you going to push yourself, do something that might open you up for damage, whether it's physical or emotional, push yourself beyond your limits to see what you're capable of, right? These specific packs of baseball cards, they were from, they had somewhere in that box or in that issue, they had a 1993 Derek Jeter rookie card that apparently was going for like $80,000. And all those people that never opened their packs would never know. Now technically you could sell one of those packs for like $2,000, right? But there's a potential of an $80,000 card in one of those packs if you did take the chance to open it. And you got to think of your own career as that same example. Do we just want to play it safe, keep it safe, don't bend any corners, and see where we go with that? Or do we want to open it up and see what we can do? Okay? The thing that this kind of reminds me on the baseball side is a lot of the time people don't push themselves and they don't go for it and they don't see what they can achieve because they're afraid of falling short, right? But you hear, the thing for me is that there's this saying, UCM's head coach, I've been lucky enough to be around him quite a few times and be able to watch him on a baseball field. And one of the things that I love is whether it's his team or somebody else's that's playing on his field, is whenever there is a ground ball that goes by an infielder and the infielder just jogs past it, doesn't do anything, he yells from the dugout, "We'll never know." Right? What does he mean by that? He means we'll never know if you could have gotten it if you dove. Right? He's encouraging them, just try, just see what you're capable of. Give it a shot. If you fall short, who cares? It doesn't matter. Okay? But we'll never know if you can make that play or not until you try. In your career, your baseball, your life needs to be that same way. You have to let that fear of failure be in the back of your mind. You have to think more, what can I accomplish? What could I do if I gave my full effort? Okay? Does that make sense? So now let's talk a little bit more in depth about turning some of these setbacks into strengths. So when it comes down to it, we need to embrace failure. That's what I was just talking about. Okay? You need to push yourself to your limits so you know what those limits are. All right? If you never push yourself to the most that you're capable of, you're never going to know what you're capable of. Right? Don't fear failure. Know that that's just your limit for today. But it's not your limit for forever. It's just your limit for today. And you know that you got to it. Does that make sense? Like, let yourself feel silly and feel out of control and feel crazy for trying something that you've never done before. Right? There's a classic saying where, hey, you'll never do something you haven't done if you don't do something you haven't done. Right? And that's true. You need to embrace failure. Right? I like this. There's another saying, a little anecdote that I like of, if you were 1,000 failures away from becoming the baseball player that you wanted to be, how aggressive would you fail? How quickly would you fail? How confidently would you go out and push yourself to your limit so that you fell short? Right? But oftentimes that's the reality. You have to push yourself constantly to see what you're capable of. And then you learn from that failure, you readjust and push yourself again. And you just keep doing that, and then you'll look back and see how far you've come because of the fact that you constantly were pushing yourself. Does that make sense? Okay? But embrace failure. Don't let it prevent you from trying. You need to see what you're capable of. Okay? A lot of the time I see that with you guys because something that feels uncomfortable, right? You're like, hey, yeah, I've just never really tried to do that way, and it feels kind of weird. It feels uncomfortable. But how many times has anybody in here said, oh, hey, that rep felt weird, but you look over at the radar and you threw it harder? Has anybody ever done that? Right? I remember I did that all the time. I was like, oh, I messed that one up really bad. And then I look over and I threw 3 miles an hour harder. I was like, oh, maybe my idea of what feels right and what feels good isn't what's going to help me perform the best, right? And if I would have been afraid of trying that, I would have never figured that out, okay? So embrace failure. Turn your adversity into an advantage, okay? With that, at the end of the day, make it something that makes you better, okay? At the end of the day, if you know that adversity, if you know what you've been through, you know what you can go through, okay? So if you're like, hey, this is difficult, but this is going to make practice easier or make the games easier, right? When I had the privilege of coaching at Iowa Western with Coach Reardon, the practices that we had were grueling for coaches and players. They were so hard. The expectations were so high. We would go at it for 3 hours in a row at game speed without taking reps off. Okay? We would have coaches all around the field making sure that the outfielders were running as hard as they could every single time. Every single base runner was doing everything that they should do. Right? So then all of a sudden when it came time for a game, all the players were like, this was so easy. This adversity that I went through day in, day out in practice became their advantage because games and playing up to that level was their new normal. It was easy. Being held to that standard was what they were comfortable with. It wasn't something that made them cower. It wasn't something that made them scared. They were like, oh no, what if I get into an out? Well, what if you don't try and you still get into an out? What? Right? What if you get to that extra bag? What if you push yourself? What if you score that extra run that's going to be the difference maker in the game? What if that happens? What if you catch that coach's attention at that school that you want to go to? Okay? But turn adversity, things that seem hard in the moment, into your advantage. Know in the back of your mind, I've been through this. Right? I can do this. I can overcome it. Okay? Know when things are difficult that you're going to be better for it on the back end. Okay? When you push yourself, you're going to be better for it on the back end. Okay? And with that, at the end of the day, failure's data. It's not identity. Okay? Do not hold it as part of you. It's just information. I talk about this especially with a lot of our college guys who come in here and they're looking for something to unlock the next step in their college career. And whenever they fall short or they have this arbitrary goal set out in their mind and they don't accomplish it, they get really defeated a lot of the time. And we have to help educate them and reframe their mindset of, hey, maybe let's look at your past week and see if there's something that needs to be adjusted. Did you sleep well? Did you eat well? How well did you stick to the routine that you were given? Okay? Maybe it's a learning process. It's not a, oh my goodness, I suck now. Okay? Failure is simply data, right? Every throw that you make, if you have a throw that you throw a yellow ball 75 and the very next one 72, does not mean that you never threw that ball 75, right? It means that you messed up on that one rep. So what? Adjust. Go back to the one that you did that was better, okay? Failure is data. It is not who you are, okay? We'll talk a little bit about reframing your experiences here in a second, but let yourself become comfortable being uncomfortable. Okay? Don't seek just the easy road. That's not going to you're not going to get the most out of yourself if you do that. Okay? You have to push yourself and like that mentality. Or even if you don't like it, you have to just consistently do it. Okay? Let yourself get comfortable being uncomfortable. The best way to do that is to do it more often. Okay? That's the number one thing that I see, especially with people trying to throw harder, is throwing hard is not comfortable. It does not come easy. Even easy velo does not feel easy. Okay? Right? Some of the pitchers that have had the smoothest mechanics I've ever seen, I'm like, man, it looks like you're barely even trying. They'll turn around and look at you, well, I feel like I'm trying, right? Their mechanics just look like that, okay? They still have to go above and beyond and do something they haven't done in order to accomplish that, okay? They're throwing as hard as they can every single pitch for an entire outing, okay? Even if it looks easy, okay? And remind yourself that resistance is going to make you stronger. We know that in the weight room, right? We know that if I'm going to lift heavier weight or lift that same weight faster, I'm going to be better. But then all of a sudden, when it comes to games, when it comes to pitching, when it comes to hitting, when it comes to any of those things, we forget that. Okay? And if you let it, right, if you reframe it, if you let yourself learn from your failures, you're going to be better because of them, right? If you have a bad outing and all you take from it is that you were bad that day, that's a missed opportunity. You have a chance to learn. Oh, hey, man, I left a couple balls up and these hitters damaged them, right? They did not let me get away with anything. That's a learning point. Okay, hey, let's adjust. Let's make an adjustment with our approach. Let's adjust our mechanics. Let's adjust what we focus on in our bullpens so that we keep the bullpen down or our pitches down more often. And maybe that's the unlock that allows you to be consistent the next 3 outings in a row. Okay? All right? But that's your choice on whether or not you allow a failure to discourage you or empower you. Okay? So I want you to think right now, what is the biggest roadblock that you all individually have faced in your career so far? All right? If anybody wants to share, go ahead. Anybody have anything? If not, I'll share mine. Okay? For me, the biggest roadblock that I faced is I know that nobody likes the Y word, but I got the yips my senior year in high school. Okay? I went from my sophomore year, I started quite a few games. My junior year was okay. But my senior year, I think I pitched in 2 games, my senior year in high school. This is where I was already committed, right? I'd been on varsity. That was my 3rd year on varsity. And the pressure got to me, and I struggled, right? And I realized that I was attaching, I basically walked everybody I faced that year. It was terrible. I think I pitched in 3 games total. 2 of them were starts. That was it, right? I'd logged 30-plus innings the 2 previous seasons, and then all of a sudden, nothing, okay? And what it taught me, right, is the fact that I was attaching way too much of my identity and my self-worth to how I performed. And I realized that I couldn't do that. I couldn't control the outcome, right? I had to learn that the hard way. No matter how hard I tried, no matter how hard I focused, no matter how much I wanted it, the outcome was out of my control, right? But my response to what happens to me is within my control, okay? And what was nice for me is that lesson that I learned by being really bad in high school made me a good college pitcher. Because for me, no matter how hard I threw or what the outcome was, I was able to bounce back consistently, whether it's the next outing or the next batter or the next pitch, okay? Because I knew the past was over with. It doesn't matter anymore. Good or bad, it does not matter anymore. And I was able to move on. So yeah, in the moment it sucked. Right? I was like, man, how am I ever going to play college baseball if I can't even? I'm a senior and I got 2 starts my senior year. What in the world? Right? How am I ever going to play? Okay? But it taught me the lesson that I needed to know in order to be a successful college reliever. Okay? Now, with that time that you failed, did you step up or did you back down? Right? Think about a couple times that you failed in your life. Did you shy away from it, or did you try to overcome it next time? Did you double down, or did you run away? You don't have to share this one. I just want you to think about your own personal experience. Now I want you to think about what steps can you take to step up consistently. Okay? If anybody has any ideas, feel free to share. I have a couple, but if anybody has any ideas. If you want to step up more consistently when you feel failure, okay, or when you face adversity, what are some ideas of ways you can do that? For me, the way that I think about it is I like to remind myself of the compared to what mentality, right? If I struggle now, I get to look at the fact that I get to do this as a job, okay? Even if I have a bad day at work, it's a bad day getting to hang out and watching people throw baseballs around. That's still pretty good, right? There's people that have to work in the snow all winter. People that have to, install roofs in the 100-degree heat. I'm still in the heat, but I get to watch people throw baseballs. That's fun, okay? Remind myself of that. I remind myself of the fact that going through something difficult is good for you, right? I was having a conversation earlier today with one of our college guys, and he was kind of talking about he's really into mental performance and stuff like this. And he was wondering, hey, is there any way to build resilience that isn't necessarily detrimental physiologically? We were having a conversation about ice baths. You guys know what ice baths are, okay? And how there's a lot of research coming out saying that they're like kind of bad for you at times because it messes with your hormones and stuff. But that's beside the point. But he was asking, hey, is there a way to build resilience without, doing any damage physiologically? And we were kind of having a conversation. I was like, I think they're kind of tied hand in hand, right? You have to go through something physically difficult in order to learn the lesson that you can get through something that's difficult, right? You have to go through something difficult to know that you can get through it. Right? There's really no other way to do it, unfortunately. Okay, you can't just convince yourself that, oh, hey, if this happens, I can deal with it. Right? It's better to have gone through it. Okay? And so when I struggle and I'm trying to step up, I remind myself of that. Okay? Like, hey, this is an opportunity. I can either back down or I can step up. Okay? So when you're going through that thing, instead of it seeming like an overwhelming burden to bear, you think of it as an opportunity. Like, hey, this is my time to prove it to myself that I can overcome this. Okay? So when it comes to stepping up consistently, those are just a couple ideas, but it's going to be beneficial for you to find what works for you. Okay? So moving on, I want you to think about seeing it differently. So write down a recent failure. You can put it in your phone or just think about it. I want you to think a little bit about what did it expose? What did it show you that you need to fix? What did it show you that you need to get better at? Right? If it's a failure for force plates, say you go 6 weeks of training and you give your all when you're here, but then you test again and you don't get any better. Right? Part of that's going to be on me because I need to make sure the program does what it's supposed to do, right? But also, it's time for you to reflect on what are you doing outside of this. Right? Are you sleeping enough? Is your nutrition dialed in? Okay? Is there stress that you're dealing with somewhere else that is negatively impacting your ability to perform here? Okay? Those are the questions. What did it expose? What can you learn from it? Maybe for you to become the best that you possibly can, it's less about what you're doing in here, and it's more about what you're doing outside these walls. Okay? But how can it make you better? I'm going to read this quote. And then I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes just to think about these things, okay? But Kobe said this. He said that losing is exciting. It means that you have different ways to get better. There are certain things that you can figure out, things that you can take advantage of, certain weaknesses that are exposed that you need to shore up. It sucks to lose, but at the same time, there are answers there. There's a story that I heard of him where he had one of his worst games of his career, and the very next day at 4 a.m. he was in the gym working on the things that he failed at the night before, right? And he was in a great mood. He wasn't beaten down by the loss or the struggle that he had the day before. He was excited. He was rejuvenated. He woke up early excited, not out of beating himself up, but hey, I found some parts of my game that I didn't know were weaknesses, right? I have the opportunity to fix those today. And then I'm going to be even harder to beat because of it, okay? That's the thing, especially you guys in your shoes right now need to become comfortable with. You guys are figuring out all the things that you're bad at and then working on them. Okay? You cannot shy away from that. You have to embrace that. At the end of the day, the majority of the people who make it a long way in baseball specifically aren't the ones who didn't fail, right? They're the ones who failed, worked hard to overcome it, and then believed in themselves, even though they had failed before. That makes sense? Okay. Give you guys a minute to kind of think through this. Write down a recent failure. Think about what did it expose, what can you learn from it, and how can it make you better? Cool. And I don't want this to be a thing that you just do today. I want this to be a thing that you do consistently whenever you fail moving forward. I don't know if you guys know this, but baseball, it's a game of failure. you're going to fail a lot. Even the best of the best pitchers give up runs. Okay? We were talking about that today with a couple of our other college guys, right? How trying to avoid the negative is never a good thing. Trying to avoid giving up runs, you're going to struggle. Okay? But for you, you need to learn from the reasons, learn from the mistakes that cost you runs, right? And you need to try to limit them. Okay? It's never going to be the one solo shot. It's never going to be the one walk. It's going to be the walk that then you get distracted and you leave a ball over the middle, right? Then all of a sudden it's first and second, right? And then you get distracted and so you don't have a good time to first and then they steal on you. Then you got second and third and then, oh no, you hit a guy because you got distracted and there's a runner on third base, right? Then all of a sudden when that guy gets a hit, that's when you struggle. It wasn't the walk. It wasn't the single. It wasn't the one hit by pitch. It was all of them together. Does that make sense? Okay, so learn from that. Try to be better because of it. Okay? So now I want to talk a little bit about personal victories. So one thing too, when we're thinking about failing and adversity that we're seeing, one thing we can teach ourselves and bring attention to is the personal victories that we have within it. It's not the fact like, oh, hey, I want to avoid failing. It's like, hey, within this failure, oh, hey, I responded, right? And give yourself a little credit for doing that. Give yourself a little win, okay? Let yourself know, oh, hey, that was good that I did that, okay? Think about one task that you avoid because it's uncomfortable or you fail at it, right? Think of it, maybe one of the warm-ups that we have you do. One of the things that, hey, here's something you've never tried before. Go ahead and give it a shot, right? We kind of do that on purpose a lot of the time. Like, hey, if you guys aren't good at juggling, let's juggle. Let's fail at juggling. Let's figure out how to overcome it. Okay, let's do something difficult and get better because of it. But at the end of the day, how can you reframe it so that you can create some small personal victories? Okay, it's not about, oh, hey, I want to go straight from 0 to 60. It's like, hey, how can I make one step forward in the right direction? And then pat myself on the back for it. Okay? It's not, hey, can I throw, 5 miles an hour harder? It's like, oh, hey, can I hit my average or higher every single time for a whole day? And then if I don't, can I only make sure that if I dip below that, it only happens for one rep in a row? It's never going to happen twice. Say my goal is 80, right? I'm 80 to 82. Oh no, I hit a 79. Am I going to let myself be defeated by that? Or am I going to double down, overcome it, and make sure that that's the only one I'm not hitting 279s in a row today? And when you go back and you hit 80, pat yourself on the back. That's a small personal victory. Draw attention to that. That builds confidence. Does that make sense? If you don't notice that and you don't bring attention to it, it's never going to solidify in your brain. Okay? So make sure you pay attention. Make sure you have some of those. But at the end of the day, the goal with that is even despite the failure that you're going to be exposed to, how can you win the day? How can you win today? Even if it's just a small win. Okay? Maybe it's making sure that you eat that snack that you want to in order to hit your goals. Okay? Maybe it's making sure that you put your phone down at 9 p.m. so you can go to bed at a decent hour. Right? Small personal victory. Reward yourself for it. Bring attention to it. Right? That discipline, that stuff that you overcome, that is going to give you confidence to overcome your failures, overcome the adversity that you feel. Okay? And finally, just talk about this a little bit. Remember these things when you experience failure in life, okay? And especially in the game of baseball. Is game adversity, use some mental reps to help you get through it. Practice failure. We'll talk about that a little bit more a couple weeks from now when we talk about visualization, okay? You need to practice failure because you need to have a plan for how are you going to respond to it. You cannot let your brain just run amok, okay? You have to have a plan, okay? But failure teaches you, just like that Kobe quote we were talking about earlier. You need to make sure that you get something from the times that you struggle, okay? And then future confidence comes from surviving that past adversity. Okay, remind yourself of that in the moment. When you're going through something difficult, you're losing a game, every season has to come to an end. And you can either make it just be sad, right? Or you can allow it to fuel you, right? And have something that you can become better because of it, okay? Remind yourself that adversity is the price of admission for success, okay? If you avoid adversity, if you avoid failure, if you avoid pushing yourself to the limit, you're leaving something on the table, right? Okay. The struggles build the strength you'll need later. Remind yourself of that when things get tough, okay? Especially as we get closer to the season and things get harder, okay? 3 questions before next session. You don't have to answer these. I just want you to kind of chew on them for the next couple days, okay? What adversity are you facing right now? It could be trying to get recruited. It could be worrying about whether or not you're going to make your high school team. It could be comparing yourself to others. It could be a confidence issue. It could be the fact that you feel like you're so far away from where you want to get to. Okay? There's a lot of different things that you could be facing right now. What part of it can you make better? Can you set aside a plan, a day-to-day plan of what we're going to do in order to improve? Can you empower yourself, okay, by reinforcing all the work that you do on a weekly basis? Okay? Can you double down on your process to allow you to believe in yourself a little bit more? And then also think about one small personal victory, something you don't like doing, something maybe you're not very good at, that you can create a personal small victory for yourself and give yourself some little wins this week. All right? Especially all of you that need to gain some weight, Thanksgiving's the time to do it. All right? Make sure you get one more plate than you want. All right? Sound good? Okay? Everybody, that's all I got. Have a good Thanksgiving break. Have a good rest of your day today, and I'll see most of you tomorrow. So, all right. Have a good one.